What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Citizens Gaming Podcast. I'm Tim.
Hey, this is Josh.
And I'm Brenden.
So this is yet again another deployment episode, and this is part 2, Elder Scrolls. We're just going to jump right into it.
I mean, like on another side of the coin is, as you played the game, as you discovered lore and like learned things about the elves and whatnot, you started kind of having questions about things and like I don't know, I think it was the third DLC, the last one, where you learn about who the Dwemer really are. Those
Dwemer.
Dwemer, those little creatures. You find out that they used to be elves that were, I guess, native to Skyrim, that got driven underground by the Nords that came in full force and took over. And
Oh,
you
no,
learn about
you're thinking of Falmer.
Falmer. Yes, God, all the names are similar. Yeah, so the Falmer. So you learn about them, and you're like, well, that's interesting. The biggest one that never got answered for me, maybe it's been answered somewhere, is what happened to the dwarves?
Well, dwarves are Dwemer, so
The Dwemer.
there aren't
That's the
technically
biggest mystery.
there technically aren't dwarves in the world of Elder Scrolls. Like, you're either man or mer. Mer implies that you're an elf. Man implies that you're a normal human. So anything that is like technically named like mer, like Falmer, Dwemer, etc., they're
Elf.
elves. Yes, and
Oh.
anything.
So, do we even know what those guys look like? Still to this day, I don't know.
No, I mean it's been one of the prevailing mysteries throughout the entirety of the Elder Scrolls is what's going on, because you stumble into their ruins all the time. Like, there's God only knows how many ruins across
Yeah, and they were an
Skyrim,
advanced
especially.
civilization that just vanished because they took nothing with them. They were just gone,
Yeah,
is what the game teaches you. They just are
they just
gone. They disappeared.
disappeared without a trace one day, and nobody knows why. Um, maybe that's something they'll tackle in 6, possibly. Who knows? I don't know. Um, but yeah, I mean that's the thing. Like, this game's like, the overall lore of the Elder Scrolls still has a lot of mysteries to it, and a lot of stuff that is
Unanswered.
hinted at, unanswered, and just kind of up to suggestion and interpretation.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, that's it's also one of the things I honestly like about Elder Scrolls, at least so far. I guess I don't know how. I mean, we'll talk about this later on probably, but I don't know how they're going to do 6. But typically, each Elder Scrolls game focuses on a specific region within the continent of Tamriel. So I mean, yeah, like Oblivion focuses on in the capital area, uh, Cyrodiil. There it is. Jesus Christ.
Capital where the Imperials are from, right?
Yeah, and then Skyrim obviously focuses where the Nords are from in Skyrim. Uh, Daggerfall.
And how it's struggling. There's a balance between like the control of the Imperials and the
You talk about
Nords, who are
the Stormcloaks
originally,
in Skyrim.
well, the Nords. It's the struggle between the Nords, who are the children of the land, right? They were there first, and the Imperials, obviously the Imperials, who are spreading across all of the continent to kind of like bring order and control.
That's not entirely accurate.
No?
The Imperial family got basically crushed and taken over by the, god damn it, what is it? It's like the High Rock Alliance or something like that. I forget exactly what it's called. So they got taken over, and they're using the Imperial family as like a front to kind of push their agenda. And so they have moved like the Imperial armies into across all of Tamriel, but specifically in Skyrim, into Skyrim. And like the Stormcloaks are resisting that because they don't like the Imperials, because they're kind of puppets at this point. At least to a point they are. I mean, that's what sets up one of the major conflicts in the game, is the Skyrim civil war between the Stormcloaks and the Imperials.
The Nords were independent.
Well, they've always, I mean, they're all subjects under imperial rule, but they were left alone. Like they were left to rule themselves and just I mean essentially like be on their own. I mean they were still kind of a
That's right.
fiefdom.
And then the Stormcloaks didn't like that sense of control. That
Well, they didn't like essentially being invaded and trying to be forced under heel. So so that's why the Stormcloaks exist, at least to a point.
yeah.
I mean, again, it's one of the. I mean, God, maybe I'm
Never
maybe I'm
sided with the
stretching it a bit.
Stormcloaks. I didn't care for them.
Well, it's because they were ran by kind of a tyrannical, narcissistic asshole.
Yeah, Ulfric.
Yeah.
Yeah.
One of my favorite, hands down, favorite aspects of the game, and this is what kind of paved the way for me playing other RPGs, is the explorability of the game. There's almost not a single inch of that map that's not untouched by something that they have thrown into it. There's hundreds of different caves and ruins and just all sorts of things that you can get into and explore. And
It has such a vertical and it has such an up and down, side to side depth. And then, like,
Yep.
I know that sounds too like simple the way I say it, but it's that, but at a massive scale.
Well, I mean, it's a game is 3-dimensional. Like it's got you can go up to some of the highest peaks. You can go into some of the deepest valleys. You can swim in the big lakes and rivers and shit, and go into. I mean, like you see a hole in a in a mountain. It's
That's
probably
an
a cave.
ominous
Go
hole.
down
Can
into
I
the
go
cave.
inside it?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
Pretty much anything you can see in the game, you can get to one way or the other.
yeah.
I wish
And
other games would take this from Skyrim. You're rewarded for exploring.
it does do a
Witcher
very good job of
3.
that.
Yes.
I mean,
For sure.
there are plenty of other games that reward you for exploring, but I mean, you're right. Not every game does a good job of it.
No.
And Skyrim usually finds some way to do it, like with, like, oh, I've never been in this cave before because, like, a quest never took you there or whatever, and then you walk into the cave and all of a sudden you see like a dead body, and so you're like, oh, what's this dead body doing here? So you go, loot it like a normal RPG character, and maybe he's got a book on him. So then you read the book, and it's about like, oh, there's a secret treasure somewhere in this cave. I just know it, da da da. And then all of a sudden you close the book, and it's like, new quest appeared. Find the treasure in the cave or whatever. I mean that's just one example. It's not all the examples. Sometimes it is.
Yeah, it's. I would argue to say a lot of games, Drew. I mean, obviously, a lot of games that are even out or even still going to come out drive a lot of inspiration from a lot of games that do things differently. And Skyrim, I would like to wholeheartedly believe that Skyrim has caused a lot of games to do those things. Because, I mean, for me, before Skyrim, I don't remember, besides Fable 2, a lot of games that did that, and then it's cool seeing that a lot more games, like I mentioned, Witcher 3, that a lot of these games that are doing open world concepts and stuff like that are doing things like that now. You know?
Well, again, part of that is having a true open world and like going anywhere and doing whatever. And I mean, some games just put that on a box to. I mean, it's a buzzword, is what it is. Like, it's you say open world action RPG, like somebody tingles somewhere. There's a CEO who's like, "Ooh, that makes money," but like, it's to make an open world feel lived in and fleshed out and reward you for going the extra mile. Is something that Skyrim did very well, and it is something that it happened in games before that, and it's happened in games after. But it's one of those things that once people latch onto it and see that that's what can happen, like you want to see more of it. Like once you've seen it once, you're like, well, why doesn't every game do this?
Yeah.
And I mean, oh, go ahead, Tim.
I was going to say, you're absolutely right. And that's also I don't want to say a bad perspective, but a bad way to look at things. I mean, you can't expect every game to
Yeah,
play the same way as an Elder Scrolls.
yeah. I mean, it's not right. You can't put
It,
everything into one game. You can't have
No.
every game be
if
everything.
if anything, it made you kind of expect what you could get at, your money's worth out of a game, right? It set the bar and expectations that you would have for future games to come, not from the same developer, but even a lot of games that started to do like what you said, Brendan, is be like, oh, open world RPG, like like showboating essentially to kind of get that player base in there, but really it's like a half-assed attempt that was just kind of like used as bait to get people in, and it's something that is obviously never going to go away, but it's in the hopes that you think if like you hear that this game that's coming out you're going to get, and it's like it's being widely talked about like what it has in it, what it's aiming for, and you would think back to games like Skyrim and hope that this game is going to derive some sort of inspiration of what they're showboating, right? But it's like sadly not the case in so many video games, you know.
A lot of
Well, I mean,
games. Go ahead, Brandon.
part of that's just the hype train and you know, advertising, people jumping on that stuff. But I mean, it's part of it is people and games making open worlds that don't really need to be there. Like I could think of, I mean, I won't name
There's
any
a
off
lot.
the top, but there's a lot of games that have open worlds that really don't need it. Like it's literally just there to say so they can put it on the box, like
The
or
biggest one for
so to
me is
speak.
the Far Cry games.
I mean, we could argue about most Ubisoft games being open world and being that completely unnecessary, but regardless of that, like it's again, it's sort of it's almost I mean a marketing ploy, and it's a true open world will reward you for being in that world and exploring it. Trying to cover almost every inch of it, and rewarding those people who want that or have that exploration instinct. Again, like, hey, I don't know what's over there. I'm gonna go walk that way for 10 15 minutes or whatever to see if there's anything on that mountain or in that valley or whatever. And odds are, again, with a game that wants you to do that stuff,
It
even
will reward you.
I mean, even though like sometimes the rewards aren't always tangible. Like sometimes you're not always going to get a cool sword or some new spell or whatever. Sometimes it's literally just you're going to find something cool. Like maybe down in that valley there's in the sake of Skyrim, maybe there's a giant camp there, and there's just like three giants sitting around a campfire, you know, frying a goat.
Yep.
Maybe
Yeah.
that's it. Like
It, biggest
it doesn't always
biggest
have to
point in
be a
case.
physical, tangible reward, but there needs
No,
to
not
be
at all.
something, something at the end of the rainbow, so to speak.
It's biggest point in case to a game that kind of did exactly what Skyrim did. Elden Ring,
I don't even want to get on
perfectly.
that subject because I can make arguments all day against that one.
I
Anyway,
mean, with the explorability is what I'm
well,
getting at.
yeah,
It's like
the
you go somewhere, it's
explorability.
rewarding. Like, yes, that's what I'm referring to, is the fact that you could explore in Elden Ring and you're rewarded for exploring. That was what I'm comparing to.
See, I think this is a conversation for another because I think that in Elden Ring, I think it's almost a linear experience with its exploring. There's a lot of places where you go and there's nothing there. It's barren. There's nothing in that area, and you got to move to a completely separate part of that little region to get anything out of it.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't. I mean, maybe this is something we need to hash out in this episode. But other than that, it was relatively the same. I think more wholeheartedly in a lot of ways. Still drove a lot of inspiration in that aspect, I think.
It's been a, I mean, Elden Ring definitely, has some fair comparisons to stuff like Skyrim. for it being like an open world RPG. I mean, but they definitely differ in some areas, and especially with Elden Ring is such a heavy combat focus. Not that Skyrim doesn't have its fair share of combat that you can and will get into, but like definitely Elden Ring is more about forcing combat. There's not a lot of stuff you can kind of.
Well, yeah, yeah. If like the difficulty aspect is something that's always gonna.
Well, I'm not even the difficulty. I'm talking about there is literally stuff in Skyrim that you can talk your way out of. You can't do that in Elden Ring. Like, I mean, we should probably save that for a different episode. But
Yeah.
I mean, like, it's something to the point of the way that most of Skyrim works. Like, you can, if you're good enough and to a certain point clever enough, like you can skip a lot of combat in Skyrim. There's a lot of secret passages. There's a lot of hidden pathways, and again, you can talk your way out of a lot of situations if your speech skill is high enough.
The other side of explorability with Skyrim is the amount of buildings you can go into. I've been trying to think of what buildings you can't get into. In one way or another, I think almost every building in that game you can get into. I know there are some that you just simply can't, but
I mean, yeah, pretty much you can. It's also one of those games where like you see a door and odds are you can open it. Maybe not from that current side you're on, but you can find a way to open it.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's also again part of it. Speaking to the immersion of this game is it's just like, you're a human being. You see a door. What's a door supposed to do? It's supposed to open and go into a building or out of a building or whatever. And so in Skyrim, it just works. It does that.
Yes.
Like you don't. It's not like in like Grand Theft Auto where there's a million buildings and they all have doors, but none of them friggin' work.
No.
Like,
I will. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead, Tim.
I was just gonna say, I will say that like I'm very desensitized after playing Skyrim because there is so much to the explorability of the game, and like you were saying with Grand Theft Auto and even with Cyberpunk, there's millions of buildings, but you can only get into like 5 or 6 of them.
Yeah. I mean, part of that's intentional, and obviously I don't expect, especially since Cyberpunk takes place in the future and GTA takes place in a more or less modern setting. Like,
yeah,
obviously I can't expect like every 10-story building to be
full interior. Yeah,
I can't expect to walk into that and
I see
everybody in their cubicle. But like it again helps you feel in this world that you can literally just walk into people's homes. Like it's a little weird that they don't entirely care, but you can do it. Like this is Herdeber's house. You could just walk into his house and chat him up and take some of his silverware if you want to. Like,
yeah, they stare at you. Some of them, I always made a game out of it in my own, is to like go into somebody's house and then like start walking around the house and they'll follow you to see what you're up to.
Yeah.
And I'm always like trying to get away from them, almost like trying to hide from them, play hide and seek with them, and see how long it takes them to find me. It's great.
It is. I mean, you can create your own little games within the game if you want to. Like, you could just do goofy stuff like that.
Yep. Did you guys ever ride the horse much?
No, not really. I mean, I messed with. I think when I got that shadowed one through the Dark Brotherhood, I fiddled with it, but it was a strange.
I mean,
it was just a strange addition to the game that like it felt off riding a horse. I don't know.
I wouldn't say it was a strange addition. It makes perfectly reasonable sense why it's there. But you're
Yes.
right. It did feel like awkward and clunky and like it felt like you were riding like a weird 4-legged flying carpet
It
kind
it
of like it was
it
weird.
like yeah, I mean like, I guess, Strange Addition in my eyes is it was that exactly that experience that it didn't feel like there was it like I get why it's horses are in the game, this and that, but it felt like it just wasn't really meant to be in the game as like a functioning purpose. Like it felt odd. It was off. It was just weird. I don't know if you guys played with it much, but like I thought when I got the horse, I was like, "Oh, this is gonna be cool." And I was doing it, and I'm like, "Okay, this kind of sucks."
Yeah,
And
I mean,
so I never did it again.
I didn't like the horse mechanics. My very first playthrough, I did buy the horse, and I ended up abandoning the horse because the mechanics of it just they didn't seem right.
I mean, the horse is probably more of a midpoint because you're gonna start. You have to walk everywhere, like,
Yes.
and that can be really annoying depending on how far you're going. And so like the horse sort of acts as a midpoint because then once you find all of the major points of interest on the map, then you can just fast travel around and it's not that big of a deal. So I think the horse was, I mean, as awkward as it was supposed to be kind of the midpoint between you finding every major spot on the map that you can fast travel to and you know not having to walk across the map.
And I could see that point. I agree with that. Just wish that there was a little bit more time taken into the mechanic. Not saying that the idea of the horse was
Agreed.
bad. It's just the mechanic of the horse made it almost
It felt
unusable.
weird. It was weird.
Yes.
It was like this weird like floaty thing. Like I don't know. Like it was weird.
I mean, yeah, it was weird, but hey, it helps you climb a mountain. So
Yeah, yeah. I mean, you.
I never, that's the funny thing is like when a lot of people like I don't I've actually heard this before. Is a lot of people like I don't know how you didn't use a horse, and I was like, what? Like I don't know how you didn't just walk everywhere. Like,
I found it more
just
enjoyable to walk. Like,
yeah,
I mean, there were times that I take like the wagon and the wagon and horse that sits outside of every major hold to wherever I
yeah.
need to go if I just was being lazy and didn't feel like walking. But I mean, I've definitely walked from Solitude to Riften. That's one side of the map to the other.
It helped that the game was very beautiful. I think in that aspect. Thankfully, that game was as beautiful as it was and still is, and had such scope and size and just so much in it that like that walking was actually enjoyable. I mean, because there's so many games today that like have so much like space to cover that are you're like, "Fuck, I really got to go all the way over there." In
Hmm.
Skyrim, it wasn't really a thought.
I mean that is true. Like it might have been a little annoying to walk, but at least you would kind of have an adventure on the way. Usually, like maybe you'd run into
Yeah,
bandits on the way, or maybe you'd find that last dragon wall you were looking for, or whatever.
yeah,
Or
Um,
just a random NPC that you pick up another quest line from.
yep,
yeah,
I mean, if you a lot of times when you're walking, you could run into traders. So if you needed to sell stuff, but didn't feel like fast traveling to one of the holds because maybe it wasn't in the area that you're going, chances are you would run into a trader along the way.
yeah.
yeah. In even so on that note of like the walking and finding things is when I first started getting into like playing with like the mods, right? When Skyrim came out in the Xbox One and they brought the mod system into it. They added this mod where there was NPCs would be more frequent on the roads, and there would actually be some like Civil War-ish issues going on between like the Stormcloaks and the Imperials. So I put that mod in, right? And it made it so crazy because you just be walking, all of a sudden you're and just swords clanging, and you look and you see just a little Civil War of a couple of, a battalion of like Stormcloaks and Imperials fighting, and that for me, some of those mods were so cool. I was like, that makes it neat.
I mean
The
that's that's a whole other side of the game that we haven't even talked about yet. Is just how deep it's gotten with mod support, and I mean, again, in the last 11 years or so, and just all the insane stuff that has been modded into the game. Um, I mean,
I think Skyrim, if correct me if I'm wrong, isn't it not the first one to kind of like introduce mod support on console?
yeah, on
Uh,
console, yes, it
it
was.
depends on when
I
they
think it
did
broke that
because,
barrier.
well, no, because Farming Simulator on console did allow mods and it had a mod hub
Oh,
within the
really?
game. Yeah.
Oh,
So
I
I guess
didn't
it
know
kind of
that.
depends
Okay.
on because it was only next gen when they started allowing mods for Skyrim, correct?
Yeah, when it came to
Yeah,
Xbox One
and
and PS4.
well, I mean, Farm Sim 17 allowed mods, so they're probably like
Well,
right there neck and
Okay,
neck.
so
I mean, Skyrim
okay.
Special Edition was before that. It was 2015 or 16. So,
So it may be the first one to break that barrier.
well, I mean, it's also the first one of these games to allow mods on
Yes,
consoles.
yes,
Maybe if not in
Did
general, it was definitely probably. Well, maybe we should clarify with that. It's probably the first big major AAA title to put mods on consoles.
yeah.
it was and I would have to say like I don't think I've gotten a solid playthrough really trying to play with mods. I'm actually that's something I've really been wanting to do, but of course, that's just never going to happen for me because my Skyrim doesn't like me. Um, but like, have you guys played with any of the mods on the console version or?
I haven't played with mods yet. One of my goals for one day, which will probably never happen at this point, let's be honest, is to mod the hell out of Skyrim. And I'm talking PC version because obviously
Oh, you're going your PC? Okay, okay.
there's a lot more options for mods,
Yeah,
and mod it, and because there's so much depth to the mod. I mean, there's what new storylines and new areas and graphics mods and character mods, and the list goes on
I
and
mean,
on as to what
I mean,
mods
yeah,
are.
I mean, you guys saw that Unreal Engine 5, that guy that rehashed, I think, what was that area? I forget what it's called. And,
Riverrun.
and I know there's probably mods already that are probably not that extensive but it can get damn near close. And I would imagine PC's the way to do it.
Yeah,
PC definitely has the better way to do
Yeah.
it. I mean, but that's the other. I mean, like there is like graphics mods that touch everything up. I mean, like you were
hmm
talking about, Josh. There's beefing up NPC encounters and stuff like that. But there's also just simple stuff like if you, I I I watched my cousin do it. Like he just loaded up a lightsaber mod, so all of his swords were lightsabers, and he just ran around like a freaking Jedi the entire game. Like
yeah.
it can be that simple. Like and that can really just change the game. I mean, it even had like the sound effects and stuff too. So it made like the lightsaber
Well,
flash noises and stuff like that.
this latest release of Skyrim, they brought they made it so you could buy one of the mods and it included fishing. I mean, yeah,
Yeah, oh yes, farming and fishing.
yeah,
So basically, yeah, because Tim, you're the one who asked about this. With the newest, Skyrim's like newest version for Xbox Series X and S and PlayStation 5, uh, they added a survival mode for the game to where you have to be careful not to freeze to death. You have to make sure you eat and you can fish. You can when you have your house. I don't know if this pertains to like just your hearth fire experience, so like building your house, but you can farm and have your own little farm, grow your food.
Uh,
And
I'd imagine it's exclusive to the Hearthstone stuff because all the other ones are like in the city. Can't really farm there.
so, I mean, that's crazy. I mean, that game was already in depth, but could you imagine being able to do that? I kind of actually really want to try to do that. It's, but, like,
I mean, uh, it they've had hardcore setting. I mean, there's a dedicated community that loves like the hardcore setting and stuff. I mean, Fallout New Vegas had it. Um, and yeah, like you have to sleep, you have to eat, you have to drink, you have to live in addition to all the other stuff that you're doing. And it can be quite the task because it's a lot of stuff is just stuff you don't normally think about.
So we
Like you
talked.
can't just survive on potions.
So we talked about mods, and I kind of talked about how in depth like mods have gone in like Grand Theft Auto 5. I haven't even begun to try and dabble in the mods in Skyrim, but it just I'm sure is absolutely insane what
Oh yeah.
these people have created for this game.
I mean, especially
It
in
is.
11 years with how big this game was and still is.
And then on
A
top of
mod I
that,
played with. There's a specific mod actually. Tim, you know how you mentioned earlier how like it's like the personalization of like where you came from, your character comes from, like that kind of a thing. There's mods that you can change your starting, where like you can change that you arrived on a boat in Solitude.
yeah,
That's how the game starts.
yeah, there's
And like that's I'm just like I did that once and I was like, this is so cool. You know what I mean? Like this changed it.
yeah. Like I said, I've said this before, and I'll keep saying it again. At this point, I don't think there's a limit to what mods can do, what modders can do when they create their mods for any game. Essentially, at this point,
I, video games need to like bring that into the fold more. I think I feel like that is such a niche little thing that like would gives you such an opportunity to that I feel like that adds to the replayability of the game, right? Like I feel like all these developers and all these developers out there want like a 10-year game, right? Is that
arguably,
not arguably, isn't that not one of the
well,
perfect ways to ensure?
yeah, I say arguably because Madden is obviously not a 10-year game. It's a 6-month game.
If
Yeah.
that.
I mean, but no, like games like this, yes, absolutely, I'll agree that I would think ultimately some of these studios would like to have longevity in these games, and adding mods into it does help it make a more replayable game.
I mean, absolutely. I mean, again, just some of the smallest things can give you just the biggest change. I mean, like I said, with just the lightsabers, or turning all the dragons into Macho Man Randy Savage. Like that's just endlessly entertaining. Like
Yes.
I still laugh at that shit. It's
Yes.
been like 11 years. I still think it's the funniest goddamn thing.
It could be something that's actually shifting though. Like I guess realistically that I mean this just could be me noticing this kind of stuff, but it's just the fact that like these mod communities are so huge and being very recognized now, right? That I feel like that developers are starting to support them, like specifically Skyrim and their mod list support, like to support. I just feel like maybe this is something that is coming
So
and is slowly shifting.
in some communities, absolutely, I will agree with you. Other communities, developers are doing everything they can to kill the mod community.
It
GTA,
it
yeah,
depends. I mean, it depends on the game. I mean, Bethesda has been very open about releasing their games, and eventually, a little while after the game comes out, they borderline hand the tools of the game over to the community so that they can mod the shit out of it and do whatever they want. And I mean, there's no question that helps the longevity of a game like this.
I think Skyrim's point in case hardcore. You know,
And I mean, it's not even just with Skyrim. I mean, even plenty of other Bethesda games. Fallout 3 had plenty of mods. So did Oblivion.
Yep.
So does
Yeah.
Morrowind. I mean, and Fallout 4 as well. Like it's Bethesda is just very open to the modding community because they see the benefits that it brings them, and uh, we as players can reap the rewards of that. Um,
arguably,
some
yeah, I'd arguably like to say I think this is what's probably also helped Skyrim be so relevant still to this day. Is a lot of that mod
I'm
stuff.
sure it's definitely a factor.
Yeah,
100%.
absolutely. Yeah.
It's not the sole reason it's still relevant
Not
to today.
sole reason. Not. I would like to say it's. I would believe it's a pretty big reason.
I mean, yeah, I mean, it's got to be fairly big
Yeah.
with all the
Um,
all the stuff they put in.
but no, there's definitely developers out there trying to kill the mod community for that game.
Yeah, I know. Me and you've talked about GTA.
Yeah, I mean, we
few
talked about it
times.
in our GTA episode. Rockstar is
Yeah.
absolutely trying to kill the mod community. They're constantly pushing updates to try and break all the mods. And then there's other communities like the Farming Simulator mod, where, and we're getting a little off topic here, but in Farm Sim
Yeah, it's still
22,
good.
in Farm Sim 22, they actually took a popular mod from Farm Sim 19 and integrated it and incorporated it into that game. I would love to see a shift like what Bethesda's doing and what I forget who makes Farm Sim, but they take those mods, they integrate them, and they take those ideas and run with them and add them into the game.
It's almost like the next. It's like almost like the next version of cheat codes, right? I feel like
It's
back in the day, so many devs put in the little like up down thing, and a lot of games had it back in the day. I feel like it really died off, but then you have like these mod groups. I feel like that could be the next step, right? To that kind of like if those cheat codes were so popular back then, there's no doubt that people would love that to make a comeback, but like maybe it's the mods,
I
you
wouldn't
know?
say it'd necessarily be like cheat codes. I would think of it more along the lines of like the next way of how DLC can be looked at. If you
And
get
that,
Yeah.
if you get a modder that has a good relation or good rapport with this developer, and this developer starts almost like advertising this mod that this person's creating for that person, now you've got this almost like sanctioned mod that this developer is advertising for them, and now that kind of takes a little bit of stress off the developer because maybe now they can kind of throttle back a little bit on the DLC if they're promoting mods that other people are creating,
It's more
and
hands
allows
on
them
deck.
to
Yeah.
it allows them to kind of focus on something else while still content being added into the game.
I mean, hey, Brandon, maybe you might know, Tim, you might even know this more than me. Wouldn't wouldn't the possibility of that becoming a thing be more likely these days because of the cloud system that allows for like the storing data cache and stuff like that? Wouldn't that not allow the ability for modders to do
I
that
don't
for the
think
games?
so because when a game is stored on a cloud, it's stored on a server within the cloud, and these mods are altering local files inside your computer. And so you're
yeah, it's it doesn't quite work like that. I mean,
Oh, okay.
yeah,
it's close to what Tim is talking about. Is what I'm saying. Yeah, it's
Okay,
not
okay.
it's not that simple, and it's because I mean that's the thing is like it's not affecting everyone's game. It's specifically affecting yours, and like um you know maybe there's a way that the cloud service could help bridge the gap and maybe make it easier for that stuff to be on consoles. Because consoles still don't really have a lot, if any, mod support. Um, outside of
Yeah. So
what
there,
previous
I
do.
guess there is something maybe to the cloud thing
I mean,
when
again,
it comes to the
it's
consoles.
I mean it may be about bridging the gap to bring stuff to consoles, not about or making it easier
Storage.
maybe for mods to be put on consoles as opposed to because now you have to develop them separately. Like it's a pain in the ass.
Yeah.
Um, like you can't just transfer a PC mod over to console. Like it's not that
No,
simple.
you have to different coding, I would imagine, and
files are
Yeah,
different. Yeah.
files. Yeah, file size.
And then I'm still don't fully understand how mods are even done on console because like on PC with modding, I haven't dabbled in Skyrim like I've said, but like with Grand Theft Auto, you're actually going into the game file itself and you're adding things in or you're pulling up a .exe and you're making changes physically.
part of
So
that depends on the game.
Right.
Um, games that are more open to embracing mods like Skyrim and the game I play occasionally on PC called Tabletop Simulator are very open to mods, so you can literally just like there's ways for you to get to just for the game to basically read it and be like, oh hey, you
Yeah.
want to turn this on like it, and it makes it that easy. Like it's basically like
that is a good question,
starting a new
though.
game.
Yeah. I mean, because like, do you so you like you mentioned how like it's like Bethesda they gave the tools to the community. It's almost as if does it work the same way with the console? I mean, like obviously they created that weird little load screen. I don't know. Maybe it's just super difficult because like even modding eludes me. I'm not a big PC person. I have never been. So like that stuff is relatively out of my league. Like it just like I don't know how it makes sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, again, developing onto a console is much more difficult, especially because most mods are done by like one person or maybe a couple people.
Yeah.
And trying to get that to work on a console that is not open source like PC development is a big barrier.
I mean, I don't know if you guys remember this. Remember, I don't like it was quite a few years back when I guess a popular modder was trying to for the first time create a massive mod to make Skyrim co-op.
I do remember hearing about that.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
remember hearing about that one.
I don't
Which
know if that
is-
ever came to fruition.
Which is, again, not out of the realm of possibility. I've seen single player games become multiplayer games.
yeah.
Granted, console would be a lot harder because there's servers that need to be involved and it's a whole
Yeah.
mess. But no, I do hope that in the future that modding games like Skyrim do become a little bit more popular on the console. Even if it is limited.
It would be nice. I mean, the only reason why is more so now, especially talking to you, Tim, specifically, because I've more so gotten this itch for mods, since you hyperverbally like really talk about it in like, GTA and whatnot.
Yeah.
It would be so cool to kind of like get to explore that side of things more, which obviously means I do need to invest in a PC.
I keep telling you that.
But but yeah, I hope so too. That it becomes more of a frequent maybe thing on consoles.
Only time will tell with that one, I guess.
It's not out of the realm of possibility, I guess, now these days.
I think we should shift our focus to. I'm going to arguably say it's the bastard child of Bethesda.
Go for it.
And it's not even made by Bethesda. It's produced by Bethesda, if I remember correctly. And it's Elder Scrolls Online.
Yeah,
I was so excited for that game.
I was too.
I was so excited.
What were you going to say, Brenden?
Oh, sorry, Brendan.
No, you're fine. You're right. It was published by Bethesda, but it was made by a group called like ZeniMax Online. They were a studio that was basically made to make the Elder Scrolls Online.
Yeah. What the Elder Scrolls Online is it's a MMORPG. It's like Elder Scrolls version of World of Warcraft, essentially.
Yeah, the short version.
Yes. I was so excited for that game when I found out when it was coming out. When I had heard that it was, coming out. Because it was to be the first introduction of actually getting to play, let's say, a Skyrim style game with your friends.
That's where I was naive. I was like, it's like Skyrim.
Yeah, it's a traditional MMO. They took out again because it wasn't even Bethesda that made it; they just produced it. There's so much that was in Skyrim that's not in Elder Scrolls Online, which, in my opinion, is why I didn't like the game.
It was basically the size, right? It had the scope of the size, everything. But what it lacked was everything that gave Skyrim spirit, which is
depth,
the NPC
the lore,
interaction,
everything.
Yes, it was literally a naked version of Skyrim. It was so dead. Like NPC interactions were so dead.
They're extremely linear.
Yeah,
you go up, you talk to them, they give you a quest, you go back, turn it in, and that's it.
It was, and the dialogue was not there either. Really,
no.
It was so dead.
Yes,
it was bad.
If you're in, I mean, it's a traditional MMO, so obviously we don't like it because that's not the style of games that we play. There are people that, and I think it still has a fairly big fan base And there are people
Yeah.
that do enjoy
It
it.
actually does. I recently, actually, not, well, I guess recently, a couple months back, probably near the mid last year, I had finally beaten the actual main campaign for the game.
Yeah.
And I only did so because I met someone who I was playing it with, and I would have to say it has it's alive now. It has tons of NPC interaction. Um, but it's still for me. It's it's kind of different.
It's
Obviously, it's an MMO.
the
Uh,
I think specifically what we were hoping for is that we were thinking more like just Elder Scrolls with multiplayer with more people. Instead, what we got was an
yeah, that's what I
MMO
thought.
with an Elder Scrolls paint job, and that's really
Yes,
more of what it is.
it
Um,
really still is that.
no,
Still,
it absolutely still is that.
yeah.
Um, but I mean, it definitely has a following. It's still one of the bigger MMOs, and I mean, they're still releasing content for it. There's still people playing it. I mean, it just got an expansion earlier
Something
this
like
year,
that.
late last year, something like that. Like, so, I mean, like it's still going strong. It still
Mhm.
has its community and its fan base. Um, but I mean, yeah, it's one of those things where I feel like a lot of people who were looking for something else, and what we got instead was the product that we now have, and it's good for the people who found that game and like it and whatever. But it's not what it's not what a lot of people wanted. I don't think.
No, yeah. I mean, because I mean, I did. I played it, and it where it's at right now. It has life to it. It definitely has corrected a lot of the things that I hated when I first played it. But it's still very cut and dry. Still, it's still,
Yeah.
even though the NPCs are more talky talk, and you actually hear NPCs having conversations. There's more livelihood to the game. It still is like Tim said. It's still go to point A, point B. There's literally not a lot of in between experiences.
Which
It's still very dry.
that is the basis of an MMO. So we were just really hoping for something else, and it wasn't what we were hoping for.
It was like the next Skyrim experience, basically, is what we were hoping
Yeah.
for. Yeah.
Little trivia: did you know that the guy that plays Dumbledore, the I guess new Dumbledore, is the voice of the Prophet in
Yes.
Elder Scrolls Online?
Yes. I noticed that immediately.
Oh
So
yeah.
did you. I
Oh yeah,
remember that.
100%
I
I
was
did.
like,
Yeah.
what? That was more incentive for me to play it. I'm not gonna lie. When I was like, oh, this is gonna be so cool. And
And
damn
I'm
it,
like, what's Dumbledore doing here?
You're in the wrong franchise. Get out of
Yes,
here.
get out of here. You're drunk. Too much butterbeer. Anyways,
Well, I mean, slightly on that point, that's
Yeah.
actually something that Bethesda uh, does in general. I mean, in particular, Elder Scrolls. Like, Patrick Stewart's in Oblivion. Like,
What?
yeah, he's he's the king. He's Emperor Tiberius Septim the fourth.
Oh, I think you're right.
And then in Skyrim, it's was it Christopher Plummer is the like main graybeard. I think it's Christopher.
Wow. Oh shit. So they take the those old iconic movie actors and they bring them in for those. Okay.
just like little cool cameos. Yeah, that's pretty neat.
I mean, yeah, Fallout 3 had Liam Neeson.
Did
He
it
was your
really?
dad. Yeah, he
Really?
was the main character's dad. Yeah,
That's pretty cool.
That is neat.
So, Elder Scrolls Online, take it for what it is. I wish it was more, but
It could have been so much more.
it's an MMO. It's not, an RPG like. I mean, it is an RPG, but not RPG like we wanted.
And it was the first attempt for like a console based.
I mean that is something to its credit. It was a console ready MMO because it came
Yeah.
out on
Which at that
Xbox One and PS4.
point, we only really had Destiny as an MMO.
Yeah.
Uh,
First one, right?
I think of when each of them came out. But I mean, Destiny's less of a traditional MMO. I mean, Elder Scrolls Online is definitely more of like when you say MMO and like there's a stereotype that pops in your head,
Yeah.
it's close to what Elder Scrolls Online
Well,
is.
like we had talked about with Destiny, it's a light MMO. It's not a true MMO,
Yeah.
but it is like an introductory, and then
Yeah.
and that's like basically
Yeah,
all we
for
really
the
had
console,
up
yeah, for
until
the console space, yeah, they only had Destiny at
Yeah.
first, right?
Well, I mean, there were not a lot of options at the time
right.
for MMOs on console.
Yeah.
So that's also a big reason why this kind of got hyped.
And then I've said it many times, and I'm breaking my own rule here. Is I don't even know who made it. I'm sure it's still published by Bethesda. There's actually a phone game, and it is on the Switch too. Elder Scrolls Blades.
What?
Yeah. And it's actually fairly popular. In my opinion, it's kind of hard to play because you're playing an RPG on your phone, and so the control scheme, in my opinion, is a little difficult. But there's like people get into it. There's a whole
Really?
there's a whole following for that.
I mean, yeah,
And-
it's Elder Scrolls. Like
Yes.
after Skyrim, they could basically put that shit on anything and somebody will buy it.
Yes. Let me see who makes it.
And I think you're right. I'm pretty sure it's some mobile developer.
Let's see. Blades is free to play, developed by Bethesda and published by Bethesda. Okay, I thought somebody else did it.
Well, I mean, they did it. I mean, it's also, I mean, in that same space, they have the Elder Scrolls Legends, the like trading card game that they made, which is also still fairly popular. I mean, I don't think it's it's not Hearthstone or Magic the Gathering or anything, but it definitely again has its following, it has its fan base because it's still getting updated to this day.
That's interesting. I honestly didn't even know that there was a card game for Elder Scrolls.
Yeah, it's strictly an online only trading card game. It's not like you go buy physical cards or anything, but
Right. Like more like Glint from The Witcher.
yeah,
Oh, okay.
yeah, it's a bit like Gwent.
Okay. Or Gwent,
But-
sorry.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's it's fun. I mean, it is what it is. Like, it's just kind of like a goofy trading card game that they put on. Actually, I think it was on everything at one point. I think they might have taken it off some stuff because it wasn't as popular on those platforms, but it's still on mobile and on PC.
That's pretty cool. I might have to just check it out just to see what it's about.
I mean, there is literally a card for you taking an arrow to the knee. So,
Of course there is.
I mean, how do you not?
Yeah. I mean,
At this point, that is Elder Scrolls lore, is people taking arrows to knees. Like, that's just
that is arguably, or I can't even say arguably, that is the most iconic line from that game.
pretty much, yeah. Like, I guarantee you it'll be somewhere in Elder Scrolls 6. Like,
Well, and
they'll hide some dude away somewhere and be like, "Oh, I was in Skyrim a while ago. Then I
Well-
took an arrow to the knee." Like,
And if you gave people 5 lines from different NPCs in in Skyrim, and that was one of them, everyone's gonna know that one.
well, it was also so prevalent. Was the problem? Is like, like almost every guard was somehow an adventurer in a past
Yes.
life, and then they all got shot in the knee. Like,
I mean,
Yeah,
maybe
people
in
were
that
getting tattoos of an arrow in their knee. I mean,
maybe in that time period, the arrows to the knees at those years were just really up there.
maybe, I don't know.
it was a random arrow. It made sense. You had your shield and the only thing exposed
Yeah,
were your knees,
yeah,
bro.
maybe
Like,
the flaw in the armor.
yeah, it's just your knees were naked, bro. You took an arrow to
Yes. So we've talked about it a few times over different episodes. It's confirmed there is an Elder Scrolls 6. We have rumors of leaks of where it's going to be at.
All speculation.
I say I don't think it's confirmed yet.
speculation and underwhelming
Um,
speculation.
but there's not a lot of information out, and rightfully so, because they can't
It's
be
far
too
off.
deep into it yet. I mean,
Yeah,
we're still waiting on Starfield to come out.
and
There-
Starfield
there's-
got pushed back.
Yeah, Starbound got pushed back, and they confirmed. I mean, even it was a while ago now that they are still in very early stages of like pre-production, i.e., they're still coming up with what the hell Elder Scrolls 6 is going to be. Like, so like they haven't decided where it's set, what the story is going to be, what your main character focus is going to be, what that story is going to be.
It's been so long. I mean, because I don't know if most of the Elder Scrolls how they derive due to like actual like uh, ongoing issues in the world at large, but like most games, a lot of games kind of derive inspiration and story and stuff like that based on what's kind of like popular in the world, right? And uh, I would imagine with everything that's gone on since the creation of Skyrim, like how would they tackle another game, you know?
I mean, they'll
When it
find
came,
something.
Yeah.
It's
So
they'll allegories for stuff.
the latest.
Easy.
Go ahead, Brenden.
No, you're good. I'm done.
Okay. Okay. The latest rumor, and again, this is pure rumor. I don't think anything's been confirmed yet. Is that it's going to take place in Hammerfell?
Yeah, I heard that, and
I,
I mean, I'm not against it, but
I'm not either.
yeah.
This is me kind of being more hopeful. I was hoping for something a little bit more, which, I mean, I guess is still very much a possibility. Is I'd like to see one that encompasses all of Tamriel. And
I don't.
and it might be too big of a game to do at this point.
I think that's the real issue. Is that all of Tamriel is a big landmass. Like that's a lot.
I mean, you think about
I
the
mean-
size of Skyrim alone.
Yeah, if you would want to do that, but all of Tamriel, like the game would probably be like
What
at least like
What
8 times the
happened?
size.
Yes.
what haven't we seen in Elder Scrolls? Like what? Because for me, if I thought of it, the next sequel, right? So you specifically Skyrim and seeing Solitude, you know, the big city, and just seeing its glory. Like where could I don't know much about
So-
Tamriel. Where could they go that could
I'm-
encompass that next gen? Like holy shit! Like,
So I'm pulling up a map right now, which I haven't played any of the other games, so I can't really say like, oh, hey, this would be a good area. But I mean, there's a lot of different territories within
I mean,
Tamriel.
I have one, but I don't think they can do it.
What is it?
What would you want to see, Brenden?
I would absolutely kill somebody if we could go to Valenwood.
Valen-
What is it?
Oh, yep,
Valenwood?
on the southern part of Tamriel.
what does that
Valenwood,
place look like?
it's where the Wood Elves come from. They're the common name, the Wood Elves. The entire continent is basically a giant forest, or well, I guess continent, country. It's basically a giant forest. All the cities are built up in trees, like they're treehouse cities, basically.
Oh no, that would be cool.
That would be.
And well, hold on. The real crux of this problem is that the forest is kind of alive and moves. So the
Ooh.
trees move, and so do the cities because they're built into the trees.
Interesting.
That
So-
would be neat.
That would-
I don't
Holy
know
hell.
how the fuck you pull that off, but I would like cut off my leg to see that. That would be fucking incredible.
That's I feel like okay. So, Brenden, you actually might be onto something. Okay, because when you look at each of the Elder Scrolls games, they really all did something different, right? And I feel like that's what they were always going for with which each of the Elder Scrolls games. So maybe that might be something.
But
Well, I mean, they always try to focus on kind of like an area.
right.
Like we talked about, Oblivion takes place in Cyrodiil, around the Imperial City, the central part hub of Tamriel, and then obviously Skyrim takes place in Skyrim. Duh.
Morrowind is
Um,
Morrowind.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then some of the earlier ones took place already in Hammerfell, which is why, I didn't play that one, so I guess it's a little unfair for me to be like, I don't want to go back there, even though I never went there in the first place. But
Yeah.
So we still have Blackmarsh, Valenwood, and I'm gonna butcher this. Elsewire.
it's pronounced elsewhere.
Elsewhere.
It's where
Elsewhere.
it's where the Khajiit are from.
Incredible. That's not far off from Mikey. I can understand.
It's where the Khajiit are from, and it's mostly desert. I would not say I wouldn't be opposed to it. I'm just saying like that's kind of its
So
general.
I'm looking at the size
War.
of this depiction of the size of Skyrim, and then the depiction of Valenwood and elsewhere. They could almost do those two regions together in one game, and it would be about the size of Skyrim.
It could be. I mean,
If they're trying
part of it just beyond the scale and what they're trying to do.
I feel like we're in that we're in that next gen era, and I would just hope that the next Skyrim would. I'd like to see that shock and awe in
you're gonna get
whatever
it,
they may choose.
you're gonna get it.
Yeah, I
No doubt
just
about
it's
it.
like, but what would they do? Because now, like you guys are labeling, we're labeling off all these areas, and I'm just like, oh God, what would be cool? What would and it's just all speculation, but it's just like you would hope.
Well, again, I think part of it is just going to be them deciding well, one, where they want to go, and two, like what stories and stuff they want to tell, and what they think they can do that's like interesting,
Yeah.
within that region. Because again, like they typically do stick to a region per game. Uh,
I think the first
and
thing is they're gonna have to figure out what region they want to do it in, because obviously each one's gonna have its own story.
yeah, and specifically when it's set, comparative to everything else. Because I mean, yeah, like was it Oblivion and Skyrim are 50 years apart, I think, if I remember right.
Right.
Yeah.
Um,
It's like for me, it's like one of these things. Like when I think of like what would be a shock and awe, it's like those. Like if you had the ability to have a massive open world, like Middle Earth, and you were able to walk upon, all those great areas in the game, and be like, whoa, and like that's where I would hope that they would do something similar to be just that shock and awe factor.
Bethesda has this specific principle, or maybe principle is not the right word. They like to create these specific moments in their games where they call them like the I forget exactly what they call it now, but essentially it's supposed to be like the like aha, or like the door opening moment where you kind of like open the door and see like all this beauty of the outside world and whatever, where you're just kind of like, oh, I'm here now. Like they specifically build those moments into their games.
Yeah.
uh yeah, they did it in Skyrim in like the first 20
It
minutes. Like,
Yes.
did. Yeah. It's yeah, that's those like I don't know, I have this weird itch. Like, was it Oblivion that had the Imperial City?
yes, and I mean technically the first one, Elder Scrolls Arena, was also in the
I mean, yeah,
Imperial.
they already did the Imperial City in Oblivion and stuff, but could you imagine like seeing that in next gen?
I mean
You know?
that is the thing, is if they did something older than, well, mostly older than Oblivion, like odds are it would be, I mean, odds are it would be a fresh thing to most people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, so I mean, they do kind of have almost carte blanche as long as they just don't go back to Skyrim.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You could really pick almost anywhere else and make it work.
I mean, if they did go back to Hammerfell or the capital city, I can't think of the name right now. It is gonna be a new experience, even if you have played the older titles, because it's gonna be completely different, and it's gonna look a lot better because of the technology that we have today.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, they built a new engine to run Starfield,
Yeah.
or I guess upgraded their old engine, or made a new version of it, whatever, however you want to phrase it. And that's what Starfield's going to run on, and that is also what Elder Scrolls 6 is going to run on.
Yeah.
So Starfield will give us hopefully a pretty good indication of what
The engine can do.
and what Elder Scrolls 6 might look like on the graphical side of things.
Which,
Although hopefully better, because they'd be farther into developing on that engine. That would be the second game on the engine, so they'd
Yeah.
have a better handle on it.
I think Starfield is going to give us a good idea of how Elder Scrolls 6 is going to look. Because there's that game, and it naturally is going to have points where you're going to look and you'll be like, holy shit, that is amazing.
Yeah.
It's yeah, I guess it's the question of like with Starfield is what are they going to do that's brand new? That's something that they're potentially going to try to
Go into
carry
space.
over. Well, no. You know how like okay, so you know how you suggested earlier like you wish that we could go to the different areas, right?
Yeah.
It's like how is Starfield going to approach that in the space aspect, the planet aspect, and is how is that going to that new tech or that new stuff they're creating going to possibly carry over into Elder Scrolls titles? Like, you know what I mean?
I,
Does that make sense?
I'm kind of confused because I feel like anything that they create for Starfield, other than like mechanics, physics, how things operate,
It's
they're not really going to be able to
I
translate
guess
that
the
to.
footprint. The footprint, I
Right.
guess, is the thing. It's like, what are they going to be able to do with Starfield? That's going to be like, holy shit! And how are they going to? Is that with that footprint? How what are they going to be able to do when it comes to like the next Elder Scrolls? Like Brendan said, like imagine if depending on the footprint of a Starfield, if they could possibly pull off that moving elf city in the forest.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, that goes back to the physics and mechanics of the game. And that might be something that they could test in Starfield, and maybe that will give them an idea of where to go with Elder Scrolls 6.
Yeah.
True.
I mean, we'll have to see what happens when Starfield comes out and what is incorporated in that game. And like Brennan mentioned a little bit ago, that may give us a hint as to what we could expect or potentially see in Elder
Yeah.
Scrolls 6.
I guess that's the best part about looking forward to Starfield. It's gonna give you like that taste, and you're like, well, shit, you know.
Yeah. Any other speculations or wishes for Elder Scrolls 6?
Not really. That sounds like I like don't care, but I guess I should say I don't care in a good way. Like I just want it to be Elder Scrolls. Like I don't.
Yeah.
They have a good
I just
formula.
want it to be that experience. I hope just that first person, like everything that Skyrim was, but just better.
I mean,
Newer, fresher.
The only
more or
thing,
less to a point. Yeah.
the only thing I would like them to change up, and this might be a little bit more nitpicky in a sense, is the combat system.
The combat definitely needs an upgrade. I mean, no
Yeah.
argument. It's always been kind of clunky.
There are games that like what is that one, Brennan? That medieval one, fudge. I forget what it's called. It was known for its.
Kingdoms of Amalur?
It's something Kingdom Come.
Oh,
Kingdom Come Deliverance. That had really good first person sword and shield combat.
That
I don't
depends on how you define good.
I mean, I felt like if like Skyrim kind of had. I mean, it was. I don't know. It's probably not the best reference.
Well, no, I mean the different Kingdom Come Deliverance was a different game because it aimed to be a realistic medieval game. Like the sword combat and stuff is like they're realistic in that game, and that does not really fit into Skyrim.
Yeah.
No, but I
Elder
mean, I
Scrolls.
guess you would hope for a more sharp fluidity.
I would almost
know?
reference something a little bit more along the lines of Elden Ring style combat. Maybe not to that extreme or to that degree, but something that gets its inspiration from it.
Yeah, it needs to
Yeah.
feel like it needs to have some weight to it and feel like you're actually fighting something as opposed to just like
Hack
waving
and
a-
slash. Yeah,
It doesn't even feel like hack and slash. It feels like you're waving.
it's almost like you could reference it Skyrim's combat to like a 5-year-old running around with his little toy, like with
a-
the limited arm swing. You know.
Button mash.
Yeah, I mean it doesn't.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah.
It doesn't take a whole lot of skill, or there's not a lot of nuance. Like you can kind of just bullhead your way through a lot of
Yeah.
Yeah.
Elder Scrolls combat.
Yeah.
But no, that's the only thing that I would like to see improved with Elder Scrolls 6. Otherwise, I would be hands off. They have a great
Actually,
formula.
Actually, now that I think about it, I would like them to rework the speech system. It's one of the things
yes, now that you do bring that up, yeah, I agree.
it got dropped from Oblivion, and they're actually supposedly bringing it back in Starfield. There's a whole speech system where you would try to like convince people to do stuff or see your way, as opposed to just Skyrim. Like we talked about it, like there is a speech tree and a speech skill, but
It's not
all you have to
utilized
do.
at all.
Well, not
Really.
that. It's literally you just have to clear the stat check. So it's like, oh, this person needs. You have to have speech 25 or whatever to persuade this person. That's all it is. But in Oblivion and theoretically in Starfield, like there's going to be an actual like persuasion mechanic mini game where you actually have to like persuade them and like try and kind of use like an argument and like a little mini game type system. That would be nice to have back.
I would like to see interactions that get inspiration from Mass Effect.
Yeah, I mean that's a little bit closer to what the system was in Oblivion. Like there's a little wheel that came up,
Yeah,
and you would have to try to like pick
navigate
what
your
you
way through
thought
the
they would.
conversation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Um,
That would be cool.
and this is probably honestly me more wishful thinking, but good God, I wish they'd bring back the stamina system from Elder Scrolls 4 because that shit was broken and it was fun as hell. Like, just for the record, the system in Elder Scrolls 5, like you just have a stamina meter and that's all it does. Like it just measures how much energy you have to swing your weapon, jump, run, whatever. In Elder Scrolls 4, there was a stamina bar, but there was also an athletics stat that literally built up no matter what you were doing because you were always being athletic. And so it literally got to a point where you could jump on top of buildings. Like you became basically a superhero. And like it also got to the point in Oblivion where you could run because there was no sprint in Oblivion. It was just how fast you ran. Like you just had that one, forward movement speed. You would literally break the game because you couldn't run down hills anymore because you would run so fast that you couldn't actually like run down the slope. So you would run in a straight line off the slope, drop, run off the slope again, drop. Like you couldn't even stick to the ground. But like you basically ran around like some like I mean you weren't like the Flash, but you were easily the fastest man in Cyrodiil. It was hilarious. And then you could just, jump on buildings and pretend like you were Batman and just like lurk on buildings and shit. It was great. It was hilarious. It's one of the major things that I missed about Oblivion.
It would be interesting to play.
For sure.
I'm patiently looking forward to Elder Scrolls 6. Of course, I want Starfield and play that.
Yeah, we'll get there one day.
Absolutely.
We can dream.
Yes. But anyways, I think that's going to wrap it up for this episode. We really appreciate you guys hanging out with us on this one. Don't forget to like, subscribe, follow, thumbs up, whatever you can do, whatever platform, or go listen to us or follow us on a different platform. And we'll see you guys next time. Thanks for listening.
Later, guys.
Thanks for listening.